Imagine this situation. It's a beautiful warm May evening, it's slowly getting dark and you're sitting in front of the television with a juice. And suddenly you notice that you forgot to close the slightly open window. By doing that, you open the door for all kinds of small flying insects, which, attracted by the light, start landing on your furniture, walls, and ceiling. And among all these insects, small moths, beetles, lacewings, and so on, you notice one that looks like this. You might think, wow, that's a big mosquito, but what are these insects and how do they live? How do they affect humans? Are they dangerous? I'll address these and more in today's video. Before we discuss these super mosquitoes, I have two announcements. First of all, I warmly invite you to another series of workshops about exotic animals and more. This time, they're partnering with the Lubin Zoo. The workshops will be held this Saturday at the Lubin Zoo. The ticket link is in the video description below. Second announcement, for the May holiday, we're planning many attractions at our exotic animal exhibition, Oh My God. On Friday at 5 post-meridium, there will be a live animal feeding, and on Saturday we'll introduce a new snake, which I think is the most interesting part. And it's not just any snake, this one is a modest 2.5 meters long. I hope the weather will be good on those days and that you'll visit us at 63 St. Nicholas Street near the Market Square in Wrocław. We'll begin the story by saying no. These are not mosquitoes. These are not mosquitoes on steroids. These are not male mosquitoes, nor are they female mosquitoes. They have little in common with mosquitoes, except that they, along with mosquitoes and other flies, are grouped together. They form the order of Diptera, or true flies. However, these delicate insects with their fragile, almost filigree bodies are midges. And now I suspect that if someone who is into, for example, aquarium keeping or fishing is sitting or standing on the other side of the camera, the name midge is not unfamiliar to them because midge is a popular name for, firstly, frozen food for aquarium fish, and secondly, some species of midges are also used in fishing as bait. Midges, or more precisely the Chironomidae family, are a family of flies that includes over 10,000 species worldwide, so that's quite a lot. In Poland, we have about 500 of these species, but due to the similarity between individual species of midges, distinguishing them is practically impossible for an average person like me, who, for example, doesn't have the proper equipment, like a binocular microscope or a regular microscope, to delve that deeply into this world and identify midges down to their specific species. Now that you know these aren't mosquitoes and that midges form a separate family, you might also wonder whether, for example, these midges, because of their similarity to mosquitoes, and not just in terms of appearance, but also in terms of their lifestyle, which I'll talk more about in a moment, can these midges, for example, feed on human blood? It's not even so much a question as it is a statement that often comes from people who think they've just seen a huge mosquito on the wall. And such a midge, which by the way is completely harmless, ends up under a slipper, a broom, or anything else that can squash it against the wall. The answer to the question of whether midges feed on blood, including human blood, is no. Such midges, and I mean imagines, the adult, fully developed flying insects, are for the most part not able to feed at all. That means they are not able to eat, which also means that their lifespan won't be alarming and it won't be a few months, but rather, at most, a few days. Of course, there is a group of chironomid species that are able to feed, for example, on flower pollen, and in this case, they serve as pollinators. Not all such midges, as you've noticed, can fly. This occurs because they belong to the order Diptera. Most Diptera have one pair of wings. The second pair has evolved into club-shaped halteres behind the front wings, which stabilize flight. And such club-shaped structures can be found, for example, in hoverflies, mosquitoes, or the previously mentioned horseflies. Chironomids, as I mentioned before, have something in common with mosquitoes. It's their lifestyle. Their lives are closely tied to water. Most species develop as larvae in various aquatic environments, including flowing, still, and even seawater, which is interesting. Other species, if they don't develop in water, then they develop in very moist soil. So water is present everywhere. And that's really interesting because chironomids are incredibly resistant to drying out. Some species can lose 70% of the water from their bodies and still survive, which is amazing in itself, because in the case of a human, well, a person would just dry out like that. This superpower is called anhydrobiosis. Such midge larvae spend most of their time in water, and they can stay there for even several years. All of this depends on the conditions in which they develop, including the temperature. The larvae hatch from eggs and later transform into a pupa from which the adult insect or imago emerges. This all happens because midges, like most insects, undergo complete metamorphosis, which means there are 4 stages of development. And now there's something interesting about this water, because someone might think that to develop, these midges need crystal clear glacier water. Actually, it's the opposite. Midges actually develop much more in polluted waters. This is because midge larvae are a superfood for predators, for crustaceans, for sea anemones. Here I mean those that live in the marine environment, for fish, for birds, for amphibians. Practically everything wants to eat these midges. And now if the water is polluted, there are fewer predators, so the midges develop much better and can reach truly incredible numbers. Mass midge outbreaks in Poland caused panic, with people shutting windows in fear. These mass outbreaks occur worldwide. Actually, I wouldn't say just different parts of the world, but potentially everywhere, which is another interesting fact. Midges are found everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Now, since it's early spring, there are just a lot of midges. On warm days, they often sit on building walls. The one I'm showing you, I picked up from my apartment building, so there really are a lot of them. And since the life cycle of such a midge can last, let's say, about 3 weeks at best, so it's really short, there will be more and more of these midges. They have conquered every continent, and in Antarctica, where it's extremely cold, a single midge species is the only naturally occurring insect. And this midge, called Belgica antarctica, not only is the only insect in Antarctica, but it's also the second largest strictly terrestrial animal on Antarctica, right after humans. Can you believe that? And here I'm deliberately not counting, for example, penguins, because penguins are both land and water animals. So it's not mosquitoes, not ticks, not bees, but actually a certain flightless midge, because these midges can't fly, that has colonized absolutely every continent. Someone else might ask, why are midge larvae red in the first place? And here the answer is very simple, because their bodies contain a lot of hemoglobin, which is a protein also found in human blood. Interestingly, this hemoglobin can be a potential allergen, meaning there have been quite a few cases where people are allergic to midge larvae, and apparently many such allergy cases have been reported among aquarists and workers in factories who come into contact with powdered midge larvae. And finally, here's an interesting fact related to the structure of their bodies. If you take a closer look at a midge, you'll notice that some individuals have thread-like, very short antennae, while others have very large feathery ones, almost like plumes at the front of their heads. Those are their antennae too. Here the difference is that the plumes, meaning those feathery antennae, are found only in males, while the thread-like ones belong to females. So, to sum up, if you buy those red larvae for your fish, they're not mosquito larvae, they're chironomid larvae, which are not mosquitoes. Chironomids can hurt us in any way, even though when there's a mass emergence, it can be really annoying. There are swarms of these insects, and it's not a pleasant feeling when something like that sticks to you. I understand the discomfort of people who have experienced this. However, they don't drink blood. The most they can do is tickle us a little. And whether we like it or not, they currently play quite an important role both in the ecosystem and in our economy, mainly as food for fish. That's it for today. Let me know if this was helpful and see you next time. Bye!